America utopia, take away the economy from those who rigged it. As I see it, class warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to Northeast Texas, Southeast Texas, Northwest Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana. Before we go any further, Louisiana is experiencing the wrath of a hurricane right now. I think it's been downgraded to a tropical storm. I hope you guys are doing just fine. I hope you guys are really weathering that storm. But anyway, good morning to all those nooks and crannies in these areas that I just mentioned that are receiving the signals from our 100,000 watt transmitter connected to those little magical boxes that Howard Reynolds, our chief engineer, knows gets those signals to convert it into sound for you. Anyway, and good morning to the rest of the world who listens to us via the magic of the internet, formerly known as ARPANET, developed by whom? Not the billionaires. Developed by whom? No one else but you, your money, your intellect, your everything else that some other folks decide that they could manipulate and make more on it than you do. Anyway, folks, let's go ahead and get to the El Estudio with the two geniuses that really make things happen, El Señor Howard Reynolds and Jacques Van Beba.
Where is Howard? He didn't show.
He didn't show today.
Yeah, he's out.
So you are all by your lonesome and you're working all the magic by yourself.
Yeah, my button pushing fingers.
Your button picking fingers. I love that. I love that. How you doing, Jack?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, yesterday when I gave my little tribute to 911, I missed about half of it, so I'm going to correct that today.
Well, go
Yesterday, I
for it.
failed. Yesterday, I failed to mention the lives lost in the plane that hit the Pentagon and their surviving family members, or the lives and the surviving family members of the plane that those brave, courageous men that took matters into their own hands. These men, knowing their lives were doomed, acted to save and bring that plane down and save lives. Their last words were, "Let's roll."
Man, I remember that. That was 23 years ago yesterday. And those guys were brave. Those guys were our hero. Thank you for pointing that out, my brother. Appreciate that kindly. Anyway, folks, today, as anything else, Jack?
No, that's it.
All right. Today's Aquino Day, of course. It's Thursday, and this is where we bring our local and national and sometimes international expert here, El Señor Neil Aquino. But before we get to Neil, I want to touch on something, how we ended the show yesterday, because as you know, I I want to make sure everybody's voice is heard. And yesterday, I was a bit disappointed in the way I handled somebody named, I think his name was Edward. And the reason I'm saying this is I want everybody to feel free to call in with whatever point of view that they have. But at the same time, the way we can get an audience to understand what we're doing is to have folks attempt not to speak over each other. And the person who navigates that as the show host is myself. And like I mentioned to people, sometimes I ask folks, hold on to stop a point and interject in that point so that we can actually not mumble over a whole lot of things, because the purpose here is that we're all educated together. There are certain things that I can learn, certain things that others I hope will learn, etc. So I decided to start by saying, please, when we call, when folks call in, I want to hear whatever you have to say. the rest of our audience want to hear whatever you have to say. But as the host, when I ask, let's stop so that we can the other person can speak and we can do it in an orderly fashion. I have no joy in listening to the Hannitys of the world and all these guys that like to have shouting matches across each other because we don't get anywhere with that kind of a dialogue. I want to learn and I want to inform. And I imagine that the same applies to those who call. But if you're calling here just to throw your point out that you've read wherever and not accept a pushback, that doesn't work well for the audience at large. But anyway, before we get in it, so Edward, uh, you wanted to make a point about money. You feel free if you're listening now, call back and we can discuss it. I have answers for you because I mean we have been indoctrinated about our economic system. We've been indoctrinated about how money works. We've been indoctrinated as far as how stocks and collars and all these financial instruments work or their purposes, and I have answers for that. But anyhow, let's move on to brother Neil Aquino, who always keeps me educated on what's happening in our county, in our city, in our state. How are we doing, my dear brother?
Hello, good morning, global audience, and everything is coming up roses. Whatever the origin of that saying is, everything is makes me want to look, but everything is
Wait,
coming up roses.
don't I have a question? I have a question about that. Doesn't that have something to do with, well, if there's a dead body beneath,
Well,
roses are
that
better on the
I'm gonna
top?
I'm gonna Google that right now because as soon as I said that, I said to myself, I wonder if so. I am gonna look that up right now. The origins of that saying. And but everything is coming up
Roses.
roses.
While you search for everything is coming up roses, let me ask you when we start talking to tell me exactly. You brought up some issues with the mayor that you wanted to talk about in one of your blogs. Is that where you want to start today, or?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that. So I watched city council sessions, Houston city council, and and there are other municipalities, of course, and I encourage you to follow them. um, Houston city council meets on they call it agenda session at 9 a.m. on um, sorry, I lost my place, at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays, and they a public session. You can come and talk to them at 2 o'clock, and then once a month, the finance committee meets. Sally Alcorn's the chair, and they get presentations from the controller, Chris Hollins, and Michelle Dubowski, who's the finance director. She seems pretty competent and down to business. Our city finance director, and then they come and speak once a month to council and give an abbreviated finance report. And it's kind of interesting. They say there's this much revenue, this much intake, this much outtake, and sometimes they'll disagree. So, which seems to be a healthy part of the process. So, Chris Hollins was saying that for the fiscal year that began last month, he projects $20 million less in revenue for the city than does Michelle Dubowski, the finance director. And they'll have different answers, but it's not a flaw. It's part of the process. But anyway, apparently on Monday, the finance director Michelle Dubowski talked about different potential tax rates for the city. So the city has a revenue cap. City has a revenue cap that we, the voters, passed during the administration of Bill White. I voted no. There's only so much revenue, the property tax revenue, that we can raise as a city. And apparently, our city, most cities in Texas have a garbage fee. Some cities in Texas have some sort of water fee. So apparently, this Houston is one of the lower taxed big cities in the state of Texas. And our revenue cap help makes that so. But then also we don't have these garbage fees and water fees. And a potential garbage fee has been it was discussed under Mayor Turner And as I remember it, it got a lot of public criticism, but maybe we should have passed it. And you know that storm debris, you at your home may still have storm debris from the May 16th storm and then from the hurricane. And there are areas all over the city still with storm debris. And they are not, Alberto and I were discussing this on air, off the air before we began. They are not exclusively in lower income neighborhoods. There are higher, not necessarily River Oaks, but there are neighborhoods throughout the city, not necessarily the lowest income, that still have storm debris that's not been picked up. It's at their curbs, waiting to be picked up. And there, the revenue cap has an exception where we can recover disaster money. We can recover money that was we've incurred from the cost of the disasters. And they talked about, I'm sorry, I feel that the city cost was something, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the exact number, but the city cost of the disaster of the two storms was substantial. 3/4 of it is being returned to us by FEMA. So when people criticize the federal government, people say they don't want the federal government in their lives. 3/4 of our City of Houston disaster recovery money is coming from FEMA and the federal government. And the conservative council member, Fred Flickinger, who represents Kingwood and Clear Lake, was, talking about some federal things that had come. So they publicly criticize it, but they take it. And the city has the ability to raise the property tax rate. And apparently its ability to raise the property tax rate allows some recovery past the cost of the disasters. So there was a discussion where Mayor Whitmire, Martha Castix Tatum, who is the mayor pro tem, she's the number 2 official in the city. If Mayor Whitmire is out of town, she's the acting mayor. Alcorn, who's the finance director, Joaquin Martinez, who represents the East End and a lot of Latino areas of the city. I think he may also represent downtown. Are all for this tax increase. And Whitmire was saying that he voted for many, many, many tax increases in the legislature, and you can get away with it. Now, Whitmire had the ability, of course, he lived in a gerrymandered district and would scare off primary opponents with a huge war chest. So easy for Whitmire to say it. But Whitmire was saying you can, if you explain to the public that why you're doing this, that you can do it. So I thought it was interesting. Usually I talk about issues of democracy and voting and politics. But I think this question of the role of these, it got to questions of the role of government, the size of government, that we haven't taxed ourselves sufficiently. I know that people don't necessarily think that, but we are low taxed as Houstonians. And what Mayor Whitmire said was basically, I'm for this. I'm open to this. But there is an HISD bond. So this issue, it has to be approved by voters. It won't come up this November. So there's the HISD bond, which in the latest poll is a close race. Ruth Kravitz at Community Voices for Public Education is leading the opposition to the bond because of Mike Miles. And then there is also a Harris County flood bond. So Whitmire and others were saying that, we can't have all this on at once. These different governmental entities are all asking for more money. Of course, the state has a $33 billion rainy day fund that it sits on. The state could help us. And then in terms of the city of Houston, there has been, talk that the firefighters contract, which I believe is excessive, has downgraded the financial condition of the city. Mayor Christopher Hollins, the city controller, has said that. Whitmire has said, he says, don't blame the firefighters for this. There's some truth to that. These problems existed before the firefighters. But I thought it was interesting to bring to our listenership the concept that we are low taxed as Houstonians, that if there is debris not picked up, it's because the city doesn't have the resources. Whitmire keeps referencing a drinking water plant in the city that apparently gives us a lot of our water that he says is in. I believe him. There seems to be maintenance issues all over. And for me, of course, I'm willing to pay the extra taxes. And of course, what annoys me is the firefighter contract. And lastly, you saw Will Whitmire gave our new police cadet class a $10,000 raise. I'm not sure how he did it without council approval. I actually wasn't necessarily opposed to the raise because the starting salary did seem low, but we know that there's a new but then that messes with pensions, and sometimes it feels that like the city of Houston is essentially a giant police and fire department with a city attached to it. So I
Now
just wanted to
let,
outline those issues to our
let me
informed audience.
let me jump in there. First of all, I have no problem with paying taxes. I tell you what's interesting here. The city has run out of money. In fact, the contract for picking up the debris was temporarily stalled out, and the debris pickup had stopped for a few days, if I recall, because the city didn't have the money. And this is not something that only concerns Texas, but it concerns all over, where government is always accused of inefficiencies and taking a lot of your monies. And people complain because people are naturally hurting for the increase that we have in a lot of other things. I mean, as an example, auto insurance rates have gone up again, some to some extent. I think 20%
Right.
this year. Home insurance have gone through the roof as
If you can
well.
get it, if you can
If you
get home
can get
insurance.
it. It has gone through the roof. Likewise, insurance for, and again, one of the major costs for people right now is insurance and rent, or rent, and again, the interest rates on homes and getting a home. And I want people to realize something here. All the very high cost increases that we've had in our society was done by private entities, insurance companies, real estate companies, and the Fed caused increase in interest rates to purportedly cause inflation to fall. I want people to understand what's going on right here. We've had a lot of increased costs. Not until recently has wages been keeping up with the inflation rate. When we got that big 9% inflation rate rise, everybody wanted to blame government for it, and I think we've already categorically proven that that inflation was caused by two things: supply chain issues caused by the ineptitude of the corporate sector, not by the virus, because again, the virus attacked us because of mismanagement. Okay? So all the ills of our society right now was caused by the ineptitude of the corporate sector. I want folks to understand that. And when these politicians, when good politicians, I'm not talking about the crooked politicians, when good politicians are scraping for dollars to pick up your debris, when Allstate and Farmers Insurance and all these guys just have to say, well, this year insurance rate's going to go up by 20%. We'll pay off the insurance federal, rather the state board to okay it, and they pay it off. You don't have a say in that. You do have a say in whether they're going to raise your taxes or not. And at the same time, you want that debris cleaned up off of your front yard. We need a readjustment in the balance between the government and the private sector. And for those who think the government is overspending, recall the debris in front of your home. Recall the things that you've asked to spend for. Before I go to tag, I want to congratulate our brother um, Neil Aquino here. He was just given a great award, Volunteer of the Year or something award by the LGBTQ caucus, and I think it is well deserved, as I don't know of someone, Neil Aquino, the founder of the Houston Democracy Project, very
Right.
hard worker, somebody that goes out there and challenges politicians every single week, actually every day, but he's out with his body on the street with a whole group of people, not just talking the talk, but walking the talk and walking the walk. Neil, what's the title of the award that you just received?
It was the Barbara Siglinari. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I believe it's an I'm Italian. I think it's an Italian name. I actually need to look
You better
into
brush up on your Italian, man.
whom she is. I'm told she's still living. I need to actually find out. It's on my list
Well,
too.
give me the name of it. Give me what the award is about.
Volunteer of the Year. And so, it allowed me, which I'm very appreciative of, if it allowed me to have a 5-minute speech. So there were 7 or 8 awards that the caucus gave. Rodney Ellis got one. So I was on the list, with Martha Castix Tatum, who we just listed. It allowed me to give a 5-minute speech at a I won't give the hotel a plug. It's a hotel owned by one of our local billionaires, but it was a very nice, hotel. And it allowed me to give a 5-minute speech to this assembled audience of elected officials and all that. So I was able to say, don't be surprised. Ken Paxton's coming for you. You're no safer than us. Um, I talked about the need for people to be involved. I also talked about, this is something you and I have talked about, Egberto, the limits of volunteerism.
Right.
I plugged my Houston Democracy Project, encouraged people to go and support the HoustonDemocracyProject.com. And we cannot defend democracy entirely on volunteer labor, just as KPFT needs revenue. Of course, you and I both look for support for the ventures that we do. And political campaigns are very extractive and don't leave something. And I think organizers, which I think both you and I are, try to leave something substantive out there rather than just a campaign that comes, sucks up resources, and closes up shop. But I was appreciative. And the Houston LGBT Caucus, a virtue of the caucus is that because they print that endorsement card every primary and every general election. So you go to West Gray, and they're trying to expand it to other areas where you may have gotten it mailed to you. Because they print that endorsement card and elected officials want to be on that card, they actually have a little bit of autonomy. They actually have some autonomy from elected officials, and there's a lot to be said for that, because a lot of advocacy groups and sometimes labor, and I'll end this in 15 seconds, they are dependent on elected officials for their operation, where the caucus, works well with elected officials, gets donations, but because they have that card, gives them the ability sometimes to criticize. So it's a useful organization.
Well, look, I want to congratulate you because nobody deserved that award more so than you do for the work that you do.
I
But
appreciate it.
secondly, I want to be a bit more blunt. What our brother just said is that there are a lot of us out here volunteering, from KPFT to Politics Done Right to the Houston Democracy Project. And whenever you hear us come here at KPFT and say, please support, remember, it's not only the politicians that need support, it's the people who are watching the politicians and informing
Mhm.
you about the politicians as well that need support. So always
Or
open
the
your coffee
engineering in the studio today.
and the engineering in the studio today. So support the KPFT.orgs of the world. Support the Houston Democracy Projects of the world. Anyway, folks, I want to go to Tag, who's been holding for a while. Tag, sorry, but wanted to get some of this stuff in early. Come on in, my dear brother. How are you doing?
Great. How about you,
I'm
Egberto?
doing fine, sir.
Neil brings up a very important point about costs, and costs are the biggest issue the Republicans are using right now against the Democrats. What always reminded me of cost issues were like ERCOT in Texas with electricity. I just had a Republican friend of mine talking about how electricity prices have spiked. Well, that's not Harris's fault that electricity prices have spiked in Texas.
Hmm.
That's strictly a Republican, Greg Abbott type of thing, the big business. And another issue that's the same is like Medicare and Medicaid. Texas Republicans have put a halt on health care money coming into the state for Texans, and and Texans still vote Republican and continue to pay those high prices and not get any help from the federal government. But
Tag.
the one thing we wanted to
Oh, go
mention
ahead.
today.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Let me just say this. This is so important because all that's leading up to this. Trump has made it very clear that if he gets into office, he wants to put a 20% tariff on everything coming into this country. And, you know, okay, so yeah, people won't buy stuff from overseas anymore. And talk about increasing prices. 20% tariff on everything would be devastating to our economy. But that's not the long and the short of it. The problem here is if you put 20% tariffs on everything that's imported, all the competing products in the United States, anybody that's making something in the United States that competes, those prices will go up 20% also. So putting tariffs on stuff at the national level that Trump and the Republicans want to do is not going to solve things. It's just going to make things a lot more expensive for Americans. So I think that people should be real leery about the Republican platform of wanting to put a 20% tariff on everything. It just doesn't work quite that easily. So that's it.
Tag,
What do you think?
don't leave. Let me tell you, you're a genius. Let me explain a few things. First of all, let me
Yeah, go
explain
ahead.
a couple of things that you said very importantly. First, you brought up the issue about healthcare and Texas. I want everybody that's listening to my voice, Republican, Democrat, or whatever, to understand just one absolute truth. Texas leaves billions of dollars on the table every single year for ideological reasons.
Right.
We could have an economic explosion in Texas in the health field if we just simply accepted the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act.
Right.
That
Right.
would bring, we are already paying, your taxes are already paying for it, and that money is not coming back into our economy. If that money came back into our economy, sick people would live. The sick people who don't have health insurance that die would live. So the party that claims it supports the sanctity of life is killing people by not accepting the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. That is what Tag is talking about. But let me tell you further. If we accepted it, how many more doctors would get to see more patients? How many more hospitals would be funded? And in the process of them being funded, all those new people in our healthcare system have to buy cars, gasoline, has to buy food, etc., for where they're at. It would be a revitalization further of our Texas economy. So your Republican Party right now is causing not only debts in Texas, but also a lack of an economic revival. Neil, you want to say something? I'm not
Let,
done, but
let,
I
me,
saw that you said something. Go ahead.
let me add something to that too. A Republican goal here in Texas is the elimination of property taxes. They keep talking about eliminating property taxes, and they want to increase regressive sales taxes. We already don't have an income tax. We just passed, unbelievably, and the voters passed, regretfully, a ban on a wealth tax and a
Right.
constitutional amendment. It was last year or 2 years, whenever it was. So they want to get rid of sales tax. So Vice President Harris talked about the sales tax, in essence, that would be imposed by the tariff. They want to fund Texas with sales tax. So you go buy a piece of furniture that you need, you're paying this huge sales tax, the same sales tax that a wealthiest person is paying. It's not bothering them. They want to make our tax structure in Texas as regressive, as super regressive as possible.
Now that is and I want to touch on that with Tag's next statement on tariffs. But before I get there, you're absolutely right, Neil. So when it comes to healthcare, remember what our Republican legislature has done. It has hurt not Democrats. Democrats are not the only ones that get sick. Republicans get sick. Independents get sick. Poor and wealthy alike. And they chose not to do that, but they don't express it that way, and our news media doesn't tell you the truth about it. Number two, that brother spoke about the tariffs. What Trump is trying to do with the tariff is to replace a large percentage of the income tax with a
Right,
tariff. And
right,
in
right.
doing so, he's created, when Kamala Harris says a sales tax, I am sorry that she doesn't go a bit further. Because here's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say all these things that you buy at Walmart, they'll put a one time 10% tax on that, or in some instances, a 20% tax on it. And that's immediately a 10% inflation rate. But after year two, that inflation rate goes to zero. But guess what remains? The cost. When the inflation hit our egg prices, the egg price went from, let's say, $2 to $2.50 or $3. Okay, the next year the egg prices stay at $3, right? Well, that inflation rate is zero, but you're still left with the high price. That is what Trump's intent is with the tariff. He's willing to come in immediately with a tariff that will bring in a whole lot of money, he hopes, for reducing the tax rate for the wealthy, the amount of tax that needs to be paid by the wealthy. And if you don't get it, people are saying, well, tariff is going to make people buy local. We can't buy local because we don't have the factories to build the things. Your smart corporate sector outsource all our manufacturing to overseas so that we are dependent on the manufacture of overseas, and the amount of time and money and capital to ramp up our manufacturing of those trinkets like baby clothes and all of that. Trust me, they rather stiff it to you than pay it. So again, you have to, an uneducated population is what Trump, and well, and not Trump is uneducated, but in what those people that are pushing that policy are for. They are hoping that you don't understand economics. When Edward called yesterday and we were going to talk about sovereign currency and this kind of stuff, that is what I wanted to get into, because we are so ill informed by our corporatocracy to make decisions that are against us that we don't get it. So, Tag, you brought up two important issues. Thank you. I got to go to
And,
Johnny.
and before we go to the next call, if I could just give me 30 seconds.
Real quick.
I don't want to leave the audience hanging. Everything's coming up roses. We asked the origin of that term. It's actually a musical, and the term "everything's coming up roses" was written by Stephen Sondheim, who wrote the lyrics to West Side Story. So we speculated it's a term over a grave. Everything's coming up roses, but it was actually a musical, so it has a
Thank you.
happier. Or
Thank you for that correction, my brother, because I was getting
I
worried.
didn't know
Let's go
either.
to Harry. Harry's been waiting longer. I didn't see Harry on. Come on in, Harry. Harry, how you doing, my brother?
Hello there. I'm doing good, brother. Yeah, love Tag's intellect. His intelligence is one of my favorite callers. You always, when you get into a good discussion with him, when you talk about money and tariffs and stuff, it really, it makes me think. And again, what Trump and the people around Trump, they want to just squeeze the working class. Kamala Harris wants to, if she wins, wants to give tax breaks to the working class, so that the working class. She said in the debate the other day, working class, they can buy homes, they can buy food, as you were pointing out there, Roberto. They can save money if they have kids to put their kids through college. And she's trying to give them a break because they bust their butt. And as you point out on your show a lot, the people who are wealthy and don't create anything, they get, when the Republicans are in control, they get these tax breaks, and Donald Trump wants that to make it easier for the wealthy people. Now, that actor I was trying to think about when you were talking with Brian the other day about the story you told when you were, I think in the mid-'80s, when you were starting your software company and your friend was doing long-distance cards, and
Yes.
you didn't get the
I didn't get the $40,000 loan. Yeah. I can't hear you, Tag. I mean, it's Harry.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That actor's name, because you saw the movie Falling Down, right?
Yeah, go
With
ahead.
Michael Douglas. You see that movie?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Make the point, my friend.
Vontae Curtis, yeah, the point I'll make, Vontae Curtis Hall had that sign up saying that he was not economically viable. And that's what you ran into. You were not economically viable because of the color of your skin. And the white guy that came out of that bank and he asked him, how did your loan work out for you today? He kind of smiled. He said, that's what an economically viable person looks like. And that just had to do with your ethnic background, his ethnic background in that movie, and the white guy's ethnic background. And that had to do with because your friend is white and because you are black. And that's just unfortunate that our society does people of color that way. It's just
Well,
unfortunate.
I needed to bring that up with Brian because Brian had the utopian belief that, well, we're a free enterprise system. If you want to do something, just go out and do it.
Right.
And I was not trying to race bait or anything like that. I was just saying the way things are.
So,
Women, for a long time, they aren't taken seriously when they went to the bank and that
that's
sort
right.
of a thing. And Eric Hayes on the chat is talking about victim preaching. Nobody here is a victim. We just speak reality, sir. That's all. Nothing more, nothing less. Welcome
That's
aboard,
right.
Melanie Keelan from Barcelona, Spain. Welcome aboard, Eric Hayes from Kingwood, Atascocita. Welcome aboard. I can't read the other name, but anyhow, thank you guys for being in the chat. Harry, I have a full house. Let me go
Yeah.
ahead and go to
I just want
Johnny.
to,
Let's go to Johnny. Come on in, Johnny.
Both Richard Wolff and Robert Reich, among other economic intellectuals, I would say, point out over and over again just what you did earlier. In addition to pointing out that the B side, the A side might be inflation driven by corporate greed and ineptitude or seeming ineptitude, but also the same people who run these corporations, they weasel their way into politics, of course, because they want to run everything their way. So whether they have people, surrogates like Mitt Romney, who act on their behalf, or Donald Trump, who, don't forget, he told the American people on the campaign trail that he's a millionaire and he can work for free for the American people and he won't need no presidential salary, right? But at the end of 4 years, he made off with more than $1.6 as in boy billion dollars, which when you do the math, that comes out to more than 1,000 times the amount of presidential salary. Everything to the Republican Party politician is a scam. They're always looking to rob Peter to pay Paul. They always have a shell game going on. So not only do we have to worry about legitimate causes like the supply chain breakdowns, which, by the way, is poorly designed because they want to run their businesses conveniently. They want real-time inventory instead of having to pay for warehouse space. They want to save money every way they can. They do that by destroying people's lives. They look at us like we're Kleenex. They blow their snot at us and they throw us in the trash. Why would they want to expand Medicare in Texas? Why would they want to do that? They don't see. They have a penny wise pound foolish mentality. Look at all the hospitals in the rural areas that no longer exist because of Republican Party ideology. They are so freaking stupid.
Let me just say one thing, Johnny. We have the solution, right? And that is exactly what you're doing, pointing out things that a lot of people just don't get. Because again, if you listen to mainstream media, they make these problems seem like they just happen, not realizing that these problems are all manufactured. If we created the right balance between the private sector and the public sector, all these things would go away. But it also means that the private sector doesn't get billionaires that are nothing more than parasites in the system, but it actually works congruently. I got to go to the next caller, Johnny. We're running out of room here, and I think Neil kind of looked like he wanted to say something. 15
I
seconds,
was
Neil.
just I would billionaires who are parasites in the system, and I was just looking at the billionaire who, at this very instant, is conducting a spacewalk because on a SpaceX thing, he's up
Right.
there. He's a
He's
billionaire
up
who's able
there
to buy himself a spacewalk.
800 miles above the earth. Let's go to
Yeah,
brother
yeah, yeah.
Art. Come on in, Art. How you doing, my brother? My brother Art is on. Come on in, sir. Okay, looks like Art's not there, so let's go ahead and go to Jacob.
Uh,
Come on in, Jacob.
yeah. All right. Hey, with
Good
the
morning, my
tariffs,
brother. How you doing?
I'm blessed. Blessings in AM. On the tariffs in 2024, the battery parts went from 7% to 25%. It's different
Wow.
industry. In 26, we got another increase. Now this is under Biden. Now I hate to come off like I'm a Trump supporter, but you got the left extremists and you got the right. I'm an independent right
Hmm.
extremist.
Hmm.
Biden with the auto industry. This terrorism is not a Trump thing. He started some of it, but they increased it. They taking
Hmm.
advantage of it. They're not talking about it. But the Democrats are not talking about it, but they're using it. It's one just kicked in this year. Okay. Now, also, I want to tell you, man, it's not looking too good for your immigrant brothers, bro. Now, I ain't talking about the Haitians. I'm talking about the Venezuelans they done captured so many of them that took these apartment complexes over, took over hotels, and they kill and they making Trump and them look good, bro. They making them look good. They are coming over here, and a lot of people, like they said, they can't check them. They don't know what they own. They can't say that they know their history when they bring them over here because they don't. And you talking about some thugs. They are thugs and they about it. I'm from Chicago. They in Chicago, but they playing with the wrong city. They taking over parts of Dallas. They think they finna do something in Chicago. They gonna get shit back to Venezuela, and that's a shame because even the Mexicans in Chicago, there's too many Italians. Chicago is too segregated with different neighborhoods.
Can I ask you something, Jacob? Jacob, can I ask you something? First of all, there are thugs of every kind from every country. We have American thugs in Panama, my country.
I'm
L-
not,
l-
of course. What do you
No,
think
no,
I'm
no.
talking about?
Yeah, but
Gang,
Jacob,
gang.
Jacob, one at a time. Remember what I said? I listened to you completely for the
Yeah,
last
yeah, yeah, yeah.
2 minutes and 2 seconds. So he listened to me for 2 minutes now. Um, what I want to know, and this is a weird answer, where did you watch all there? Because there are some thuggish Venezuelans in a few apartment complexes. Where did you see that news? I'm just curious.
It's on NPR.
Oh, okay,
I
good.
heard on
That is. Let me tell you something, okay?
Well, what did they say in
You
NPR? Did they
radio.
did they actually on because I'm reading a local news source here, a nonprofit news source, the Aurora Sentinel from Aurora, and it's talking about a far right Aurora council member Danielle Zerinsky for the past 6 weeks, fomenting without often without basis lawlessness among migrants locally. So NPR actually said this stuff was occurring, or they reported on it.
Well, let me ask you this: Did they arrest some people? Are you reading it? Anybody was arrested in Aurora, in Colorado? How about Dallas? You want to Google something? Google Dallas. What's going on in
Well,
Dallas?
Dallas isn't
Chicago.
Aurora.
I got
What I'm
videos in
I can't
Chicago.
speak to
I
whether
got videos
someone
in
has
Chicago.
whether
one wait one at a time. One at a time. Look,
I'm
Jacob.
just saying that these stories keep
I know there
these stories keep
Neil, hold on a
keep
second.
coming.
Let me say this. This is important, right?
Yeah.
Because here it is. We have a lot of stories out there as far as violence, etc. Where do you live, Jacob? It's here in Houston, right?
Right.
I've been here
Okay.
18 years. I've been here for a
Okay.
while.
All right. Good. So you've been here. Let me ask you another question. Have you had any violence in your surroundings that's different than it has always been for, let's say, however many years?
They're
Yes
not
or
in this
no?
area. They're
Uh,
not. Well, I'm gonna tell
Okay.
you who are
No,
there. You got
wait,
some
wait.
that
Uh,
like yourself that
Jacob,
look like us. They get down on them.
Jacob, I'm asking questions and please just answer the question that I asked. Please, my brother. I'm trying to go somewhere here. I'm trying for all our audience to fight to figure out something that I don't want us to be played with. Okay? There is a psychological game being played right now by the right wing, and it's very effective. It's a multi-prone psychological game, and it is my duty as a host to really respectfully show people what's going on here. They're using memes, they're using news stories, and all these different things. They are taking one specific incident and blowing it up. Are you a black man, Jacob? Yes or no?
Well, no, I'm an Israelite. I'm a chosen of Yahweh.
Okay, let me ask. Are you in America? Do they identify you as black or not?
Okay, I'm not. Well, my people was enslaved, so I don't think I don't. They identify.
Jacob, please. I'm trying to make a point here.
Well, I'm
Just
asking you a
answer.
question. I'm a chosen few.
Are you or is your pigment white? I mean, is your pigment what is referred to as white in America, or is your pigment what is referred to as black in America?
Well, my pigment is brown. It's copper.
Okay,
Like it's
okay,
written in
stop. That's all I want to know. That's all. That's all. Here's what I'm trying to say. Right now, there are people who are making other people fear you by using things that are unfair to you. Do you understand what I just said?
on over for 400 years. When the white woman would just say that a brother, my ancestors looked at her. If they're coming
Okay.
against him,
So, okay, stop right there. Stop right there. Stop right there. Stop right there, Jacob. So you acknowledge that there are forces in this country that would, for purposes known, listen closely, for purposes known, would try to make somebody who looks like you a danger to society, evil to society, etc. Is that correct? That's a yes or no question. Is that correct, sir?
I mean, it's not.
Is that correct? That's correct. That is correct. Am I, sir?
They've been doing it
Sir.
for centuries. Yes. For
Yeah,
centuries,
great.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. What I'm trying to tell you right now is the same thing is being done by immigrants. There are bad black men out there. There are bad black people out there, but there are very few. There are bad white people out there. There are bad, and there are very few in the aggregate of people, in the aggregate of him. Okay, stop. Jacob, I'm speaking. Please hold when I speak, like I hold when you speak. Okay? Thank you. Now, what is being done with immigrants right now, and they're doing it inside of our black communities as well, is to give the image that you have of immigrants as a threat to you. Just like to white people, they have made you, Jacob, a threat to them for ulterior motives. And what I'm telling you here is these are times that we have to be very, very careful with the information that we get, because they will use our own insecurities for ulterior motives. Now, I've given you 3.3 minutes to speak. I got to go to the next person.
Down in South America myself. All right.
I get it, sir, but all I'm telling you, Jacob, you're an intelligent person, very intelligent person. When you're off this line, I ask you kindly to consider the narrative I just gave you. I got to go to Patrick. Come on in, Patrick.
Hey, okay. Well, I'm going to talk about a couple things because Jacob. Jacob needs to reflect on what happened to the Chinese and what happened at the turn of the last century, and then reflect on what we did to
The Japanese,
Latinos. Yes, the Japanese as well. This happens over and over, and we constantly demonize these immigrants and folks that are different. What should be considered is if Jacob's here in Houston, he's a minority of about 20%, and then if he looks around him, then there's about a 35% population of Latin people. If they just figured out how to bond together and start working together, that'd be 55% of the population, which would at the polls accomplish just about anything they'd like. There's a reason why.
Patrick, I want to interrupt you for a second because you just nailed it. the reason why Jacob is hearing information about what these immigrants are doing, and white people hear the immigration of what these black people are doing, and Latinos hear what these other folk. The idea is to keep all kind of dissension among all these people, so that the powers, the puppeteers at top, continue to work. When I make the statement, we have to unite Appalachias, the barrios, and the ghettos, that's what I'm talking about. We can't believe the crap that they're doing, and I think that's what you're alluding to. Continue,
That's
please,
really
Patrick.
what
Yeah, go
Jacob's
ahead,
saying. That's
Neil.
really one of the great regrets I have about our Harris County politics. That there are black-brown fights, and there are within black and brown communities on the Democratic side. Of course, everyone has autonomy to be who they want to be. They can be Republican if they want to be, but within the Democratic Party, there are people who foster those divisions between black and Latino populations, and it hurts all of us.
And exactly, and we're not going to allow that. And that's the reason why I spoke to Brother Jacob the way I did, as far as saying, let's remember. And I asked him if he was black, to remember what they have done to him, and in
And the
acknowledging what they've
politicians
done.
foster the division.
Exactly.
Democratic politicians foster the division.
Exactly. And we have
Yeah.
to call it out like you do, Neil, like Brother Patrick is doing here. Come on in, Patrick.
I'm going to switch to another subject, but I'd like to make the last point that in the 80s, we were approaching 55 to 60% in the middle class, and a lot of people theorize that the reason why there was a war in the middle class and we reduced the middle class is because they were afraid that if we united, we were actually going to shape this democracy.
Exactly.
And we're going to lose it. But I wanted to talk about economics just for a second, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time if I make a mistake, because I'm not an expert on this at all. But I believe that the only way economics works is by ignoring physics. And so talking about supply and demand and talking about attaching things to the gold standard without considering the law of thermodynamics, the limit of energy and the limit of matter, is frugal. I'd also like to point out that I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, but I believe anytime a loan is written out, before the first payment's made, that loan is treated as if it's paid off. And to me, that sounds like printing money. And then
actually, it is okay. No. Actually, that's an economic fact. What you just said is an economic fact. Once you give a loan, you've expanded the money supply. A lot of people don't understand how, and the only way to control that is something called a demand deposit, and that is what prevents the forever increase in money supply with loans. A lot of people don't understand that concept, but you just nailed it. So you are correct. Every time you write a loan, somebody else has a whole lot of money, but that money still exists on the account. So you've just doubled whatever it is the loan value is. That's an economic fact. Continue, please, sir.
So then we don't, that kind of eliminates my idea of the argument of printing money causes an issue. Every time a loan is written,
you're printing. Yes. That's exactly what happens, because the person who gives you the loan still has the money on their books. And if I put that loan into your checking account, that is also new money on the books. So loans are actually the way you increase the money supply. And that's why they then use interest rates to bring it down, because you make less loans when interest rates are high. It's called a demand deposit. Hey, Brian, I got to run to Ray and only can give Ray a minute and Brian a minute. So thank you, Patrick. You nailed it. So you do know economics more than you think you know. Let's go to Ray. Come on in, Ray.
Hey, Berto. Yeah, I'm coming in on the tail part. Hey, Neil, just want to shout out to you. Appreciate what you're doing for Houston politics. And, yeah, I been working really hard, but I did get a chance to see the debate, and it did deliver. I mean, Kamala Harris, using her prosecutorial background, I just wanted to say right quick, did anybody take a chance to look at all the stupid faces that Trump was making as she was actually reading him his rights? And I hope America saw that. I not just watched it. I hope they saw that, because what I saw was a person that's competent and an elderly man who's trying to avoid jail soiling himself in front of national TV.
Ray, I just gave you 53 seconds, but honestly, I'm on tight for time. You're absolutely right. I saw that, and I got to give Brian 1 minute, and then we got to get out of here. But I appreciate your call. I hope I see you at 3 o'clock. Okay? Thank you, bro. Let's go, Brian. You only have 1 minute. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. Why was Trump fact-checked 4 different times and Kamala was fact-checked 0 times?
Oh well, why did Trump tell 33 lies and Kamala tell one misstatement? I mean that's your answer right there. Every other sentence that Trump said was a lie. It's a shame, but you should also hold on. You should also be very upset that Trump lies continually. That should upset you. That it shouldn't upset you that he was fact checked. It should upset you that he lies. And the only way to mitigate his lies is when he comes out and say it to fact check it. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely wrong. They are eating dogs. I've seen it on YouTube. I've seen it on
right, of course. All right, I gotta go, Brian. I'm sorry. If you're gonna go ahead and start talking those things, I'm sorry. Anyway, let's go to Brother Jack to close us out, and then Neil's gonna give us a quick closer. Jack?
Nothing here really.
Well, look, thank you very much, Jack, for all that you do. Neil, give me a closer.
Well, go to harrisvotes.com and check your voter registration. There are all sorts of stories about Ken Paxton going after people registering voters across the. There's a war on Democratic voter registration, and go and make sure that you weren't also then purged by Governor Abbott. And please go to my website, HoustonDemocracyProject.com, HoustonDemocracyProject.com, and read it and support the effort and be involved.
Thank you very much, Neil, for all that you do, and congratulations again on that award that you won from the LGBTQ caucus. I want to say hi to Dead Satan, who said fake news about the Venezuelan, and he has the data to prove it. I want to salute Paul Fleming from Atlanta, Georgia. I want to salute Ellerin, and I want to salute all those folks that came into the chat that I hadn't yet salute. A lot of Allison Dreams, welcome aboard. Billy, Allison, Irwin, welcome aboard. Anyway, folks, love you all. The entire show is at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, where you can find all the videos, etc., that we can't play because we did the calls. And again, love my callers, love my listeners. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
Very good. Very good.
It's time now for your good news for a good planet. From bottles to beaches. Louisiana has only 2 cities that attempt to recycle glass. And as a coastal city, New Orleans is vulnerable to rising sea levels taking over their beaches. That's what 2 students from Tulane University took to heart. What started as a conversation over a bottle of wine and how to recycle it turned